Welcome, English laureates, storytellers, poets, and seekers of meaning. This is Wingless Dreamer, where words are not just written, they are lived. I'm Ruchi Acharya, and it brings me immense joy to gather with you in this beautiful literary sanctuary we have built together. Wingless Dreamer is more than a publishing house or a podcast. It is a breathing community of thinkers, feelers, and fearless voices who dare to explore love, loss, culture, spirit, and the quiet revolutions of the human heart. Here, we don't just celebrate polished verses, we honor vulnerability, curiosity, and the courage to discover one's own aesthetic. So, wherever you are listening from, dear listeners, know that you belong to this circle of English laureates. And today, we open another door into the art of becoming through words with Patrick Trombly. Patrick Trombly re-emerged as a publishing poet in 2026, having not previously written for publication for several decades. His work can or soon will be found in online and print journals such as Lochraven Review, Beyond Words, The Dewdrop, and anthologies published by Wingless Dreamer, among numerous other journals. Patrick writes in a wide variety of formats and narrative voices. His writing explores and opens a portal for you to join his exploration of the relationships amongst human, nature, and the divine. His poem weave multiple layers of meaning into each poem, with each layer augmenting the others and creating new paths of inquiry into these universal subjects. So, dear listeners, please welcome Patrick Trombly. Patrick, how are you doing today?
Doing great. It's great to be with you. Great to be part of this. Thank you.
That's wonderful. And before we begin, with interview, first, let me heartily congratulate you for your work titled Arbor Vitae to be the grand winner of Freestyle Ink Fest. So what this victory means to you?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you. And I'm honored to have been given that distinction. So thank you. So this was a poem, I will admit, a reimagining of something I'd written many years ago. So it's in the form of two arborvitae, which is the first line of the poem. And these are evergreens, and arborvitae is Latin for tree of life. And these are evergreen trees. It's supposed to be a launching pad for the consideration of ideas. Those are the content. And I generally start with the content. So in this poem, there's a preteen or early teenage person with her family moved into a house. The house had previously been occupied by an elderly single woman who hadn't been married, wasn't a widow. She'd been alone her whole life. Her name is Miss Filbert. So she had planted these two trees, and as you read the poem, you kind of go through, when you're reading from top to bottom, because the poem is in the form of the trees, and then you're kind of going backwards in time towards the narrative, reading top to bottom. But then you're going back in time as you're going towards the roots of the tree. And so you find out that the woman had planted the trees called Tree of Life in a spot in her yard where they grew up. They would block the one window into the room where her body would be found after she passed. So you're thinking maybe she knew that, where she would end up. And that a lot of symbolism jumps out from that. You can see the room with its one window almost as Plato's the allegory of the cave, where it's blocking the sun from the room, and of course that's a big theme within the poem. So the idea is that what you leave behind is the afterlife. This old woman who died alone, like the afterlife is what you leave behind. And what she left behind is these trees, which are kind of a warning. They're the tree of life for her. They're blocking the sun from entering where her body was found. Kind of a warning to everybody that your afterlife is whatever you want to believe spiritually. The most important thing is what you leave behind. And the family is so taken aback by that, they can't really grasp. They're so frozen, they can't really look into the meaning of it. They're just kind of wondering what to do about the physical aesthetics of the tree. Do we trim it? Do we cut it down? Do we cut it back? They just can't mentally come to grips with the deeper meaning. And that's what's left at the end, the height that the trees would have been when the woman planted them. And that's where it's revealed. The trunk at the bottom where it's revealed, that's the room where they found her. And so that's what brings it full circle. That was the inspiration.
Wow. Oh my God, Patrick. It's so beautiful. Trust me when I say this. Arbor Vitae is one of your most, legendary work that we have ever come across. And again, like the whole idea, the origin, the concept, and how you have beautifully executed in your poem. It's symmetrical. You were trying to make it like evergreen, just like the tree itself. Again, the title of the poem, it was so captivating to the readers. And together it all exudes. Basically, it leads readers, editors, whosoever is reading this wonderful poem to ask themselves this question, that what we as humans must endure when warmth is gone, when our safety net is gone, because none of us think, before jumping into relationship, before loving to others. And again, a person passes away, for example, it hurts, it aches, it crumbles, and we don't prepare ourselves for such a shock. And as a result, we crumble during the heartbreaks, during demise of close ones. So again, poetry is nothing but our own representation of feelings, And here, our words, it becomes judgment, repair, and confrontation. Brilliantly done. Like, we have read so many of your works over time that have blossomed our editorial heart. I must say it on the record that your work titles such as A Quiet Season, On Solstice, He Replaces Her Flowers with Cabbages, Rain Dance, Betsy, Red-tailed, February, and of course Arbor Vitae, and among others are pure dead brilliant and a work of master poets. It takes ages for the emerging writers to become a master poet. And I'm not sugarcoating or kidding. Your work brilliantly re-examines the relationships among humans, nature, and the divine. So once again, brilliantly done, Patrick.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's a lot of work, but it helps to have a method, to have a modus operandi, and mine works for me. But I've had some time to think about how to do what I'm trying to do.
No, that's so
and
cool.
Your team has been very helpful, also in terms of when I've sought out editorial advice. You guys have been very helpful.
Well, thank you for saying that. Let me ask you this. So, do you see poetry as a spiritual act, philosophical inquiry, or something else entirely?
Sure. So the metaphysical aspect of it, I like it because it's, I try to address universal themes. And those are the things, when I started to write when I was in college, and that's generally what a lot of people were studying in college. I went to a Catholic religious college, and so metaphysics was kind of top of mind, part of the overall curriculum. They really wanted us to be Renaissance people. You have sports, you have spirituality, you had academics, and you had your relationships. So you're kind of intermingling all that. But it doesn't mean that everything has to. To me, it's an interesting topic for me. I've done a lot of that in the past year, and I'm trying to do a few other things that are less spiritual, but still draw on some of the imagery and some of the stories, because there's a treasure trove of them. Whatever you think of the Bible, whether it's your cup of tea, whether you draw and interpret it literally or not, it's a great source of stories. It's like the great myths, or the Norse myths, or any other mythology. Like it's a great set of allegories. So I still draw on that. But yeah, it's one set of subjects that I wanted to address the first year out.
And I guess it takes us back to where the emotions hits us hard. Maybe it can be our high school, during our college days, or marriage, perhaps. We may never know. But again, what is poetry? It's a cluster of emotions, and it's so amazing, to jot down your emotions into poetic verses in the artistic form. Again, I love poetry. I'm so glad. I would give anything, any day, just to follow my dream to keep on writing forever. So definitely, I think it opens us a portal to further delve into spirituality, or just to simply get to know yourself better. So speaking of which, that brings me to my next question. In your poem, On Solstice, he replaces her flowers with cabbages. So this poem, it moves associatively, image to image, without overt explanation. So as a writer, when you construct this poem through rapid, shifting imagery rather than linear narrative, how do you know where to cut and where to let the sequence breathe without over-explaining?
It's a tough balance, and this one took me a while to come to a final version. Part of it depends on how many stanzas I'm going to have and whether you can see through it. I try to lead the reader to it with the title, what it's going to be about. And this is for this is about somebody who has lost his partner. And so he's going to the grave, or replacing the flowers. It's seasonal. It's the end of the year. So it brings up a lot of evocative images. And you're as you're placing the flowers with, those ornamental cabbages that are going to last through the winter. But then it goes on to describe, so it's a little bit about his day, and then his day is kind of a wreck because he's driving erratically, and then he wakes up in time to see the stoplight, but it's kind of how his life has gone without her, and then he's thinking about it. Takes him through his lonely night with some images of the home life with him alone, and then it brings up his thoughts, and he's kind of rekindling past events. But it's hard. It's a hard balance to try to have the image and then let the reader know what exactly is this image, because otherwise it's kind of hazy. So taking it through moment by moment is one way to do that. So I thought the vehicle for that was a haiku sequence. I try to come up with the content first, and then I try to draw on the I think the format and all the physicality of the poem and the rhythm of the poem, as well as then the images, the actions, and then the language kind of comes last. Those are all vehicles. Those are all the way that you convey the meaning. The first thing is the meaning. So I start with the meaning, and you don't always have it right away. Sometimes you have to jot down some notes and come back to it later. But this one was a hard one. When it's more moments and drops of images that like that, it's harder to make sure that the reader gets it. It's easier when it's a narrative.
No, that's true, and very well said. Because trust me, I'm a poet as well. And being a poet, one thing I truly understand that mastering the poetic techniques, it is not that easy as it seems. Like, you have to work on the overall poetic structure. You have to work on the poetic devices, what suits the best. How can, we juxtapose emotions with the metaphors, imageries, abstractions, or whatnot. So again, it's like a whole game of bringing all the poems and the emotions together without making it a mess, as simply put. Of course, like we have free verse poetic format where you can write on your own will. But again, I like to challenge myself, like rather than writing free verse, like why not challenge ourselves with limerick, sonnet, or iambic pentameter. Emotion is vast. It's like it's endless. It's always fun to play with words. It's kind of a word game, finding synonyms, finding proverbs, idioms, and again, maybe creating, words and idioms of your own. Why not? Like that's being experimental. That's also coined the term ekphrastic poems. So there are so many terminologies that has emerged over time. And we have come across, for example, surrealism, absurdism. So may I humbly ask, like, what would you advise to writers who are actually chasing the deadlines rather than focusing on the quality of literature?
Yeah, I mean, I would say you're putting yourself out there, right, when you're seeking publication. So and I would say that the first thing to do is write your poem. Is know what you're trying to do what you're trying to master, what you're trying to do, become better at what and it's never going to be perfect. And there's never any time when you could say, all right, I know that it's done, because you might have a different idea later on. Or one of the things I like about haiku sequences, you can take one of the haikus and it might fit somewhere else. But do figure out what you're trying to do, try to do it, and then worry about where you're going to publish it and what the deadline is. Am I communicating? Do I have a content that's going to be interesting to other people? Can I communicate it to other people? Have and do it well, so that they either it's a new thought that nobody's thought before, or it's some new way to think about an issue that people either have forgotten about or that they do think about but not in this way, or you're saying something new. And then think about, okay, where's the best home for this? Where am I going to reach my audience? Who's going to work with me if the publisher offers editorial assistance? Who's going to actually help you try to do what you're trying to do, as opposed to trying to make it fit their paradigm? And a lot of publishers, if you read the magazine, it's kind of like pop radio in the 80s. It's like they want it's got to be 3 minutes long, this particular format. It's basically got to be a Hallmark card, sometimes with grandiose language, and you're like, well, but the character wouldn't use that language, so why do you want me to use big words? I had 8 years of Catholic school. I don't need to prove to anybody what my vocabulary is, but you want to find a partner in a publisher, so you don't worry about the deadlines. Don't put anything out that's not ready. That doesn't mean it can't evolve afterwards. It just means it should be ready before you send it out, and only you know whether it's ready.
No, that's very well said. And speaking of emotions, as we were discussing, one of your work titled Betsy, which you have submitted under Pumpkin Spice and Paper Cuts, has this very aesthetic of human intimacy, and it laid the foundation for rethinking on mental wellness. So When writing a psychologically intimate poem like Betsy, how do you ethically and artistically balance immersion in characters unraveling without romanticizing it, especially when the structure itself mimics mental instability? How do you
Right.
pull?
You try to not be judgmental, and if you think it's worth writing about, and you think that this character, I don't write about characters where the purpose is to make fun of something or make fun of somebody. If you think you're trying to carry the piece, you're trying to show what the person's going through, and really kind of use it as a metaphor. I also don't really do a whole lot of character sketches where the character is the metaphor for something. But in this case, it's just get into the character and try to use the symbolism in a way that and this is another one where if you read a fair amount of my poems, you'll see kind of overlapping symbolism where things have a similar meaning. A window means something, the sun means something, rain, water. You can have slightly different connotations in different poems, but you get a picture as you read a number of them. But you're using it, those are vehicles that you use to convey the meaning. You're not trying to force those metaphors in there or force it to fit a format. So you just try to decide, who's the character you want to write about, what are you trying to show? And sometimes the character takes on a life of her own while you're writing it. And you try to convey your message. You try to use that character's language.
No, that is so true. Was Betsy a fictional character or taken its inspiration from a person in real life?
No, it was fictional. It was about how people, who get to that stage in their life where they're, maybe early 30s, mid 30s, and work so hard to get to where they're. Anybody who's in an office job in this country is somebody who's spent their time focusing on getting to that point, and they're still on their journey. They're climbing the mountain, and sometimes you're gonna lose sight of. You put a lot of things behind you, and then when you try to reclaim it, it's a challenge. It's because when do you? It's hard to fall out of character.
Yeah. Then connecting to a character is so important because without being satisfied with your character traits, it's not going to lead you anywhere. When we connect to a character as a writer, we see ourselves in them, or we see a person or a pain or an emotion in them. We borrow their courage, grief, flaws, longing. We experience this amazing transformation safely through story. So if readers don't connect to the character, the plot becomes mechanical. Emotion is what make narrative memorable. And once again, what as an editor I would say a technically brilliant story would be with full of emotions, because without emotional connection it feels like architecture without warmth. Again, connecting for philosophical reasons and as well as intellectually making it work. Let your readers immerse in your story, because now we trust characters' worldview, like how they perceive the world, what are their own interpretations of emotions and meanings, what are they experiencing. And through stories, we somehow, depending upon the genre, but we tend to build hope. We return for their voice. We keep on turning the pages because it soothes our soul. We feel guided. So again, it's a really important being a writer, to feel that, to create that atmosphere, the reading atmosphere for our beloved readers. And then slowly and steadily, we can always, like I said, be experimental, just, further explore the philosophical temperament to it, add contemplative thoughts, structurize it with plots, subplots, twists, tragedies. Why not? And maybe it doesn't have to shout all the time, like it can be observant as well. So again, when readers connect to a writer's aesthetic, they follow them across genres, across experiments, across seasons. So yes, this brings me to another question. What do you think, which is more important? For example, when you're writing a fiction, a character comes first or the whole story, the plot line?
Sure. So I would say, again, it starts with the idea content. What are you trying to say? What's your message? What's your questions are you trying to open up? Whatever your content is, it's the ideas. And then usually the story is everything else is the way that you're conveying that idea. It starts with the idea. The character is a way to do that. The story is a way to do that. Sometimes you're doing just a character sketch, and I've got a few more poems recently where it's a little more narrow focus, and it's just I'll write a story about a character, and we're going to explore that character. But it's still an analysis of the character that whatever flaw causes the person to have a misfortune, that maybe it's a built-in flaw. It's nothing they can do anything about, and it results in the best intentions still resulting in a Greek tragedy. But the character, you need to be true to the character. The language needs to be true to the character. It's about, because the character is really taken on a life of her own or his own, and it's going to be about something else, or it's going to be about a couple of things. But that's part of the process. It's fluid. I mean, if you're good at character development, then that's going to happen. I figured something else out, and I'm going to have to go back and change what the idea content, because this character, it's too important. It's too good. I don't want to lose the character that I've developed. It's a back and forth. It's always a back and forth.
There's always back and forth. Like, we keep editing and editing over and time to time until, we are perfectly satisfied with it. And again, there is this word called perfectionism. But yeah, ask the writers, artists, and the curators, like, how much effort does it take to make your literary masterpiece, being accepted globally, like to make it universal. And as you were saying, that it's so difficult to pull those strings, especially in the rapid environment and commercialized world that we live in today. Because today's readers, they scroll fast, they judge quickly, they seek emotional authenticity because they need something to look at, something to learn and guide from. So of course they retrieve to novels, to understand the depth and complex situations in relationship, love, because if you name your feelings, it helps you to channelize and to go through it. Like, what is anxiety? What is depression? What is what? So again, in this rapid environment, like, again, we as a writer, it's our responsibility to reject artificiality, to further emphasize more on clarity, like the clarity matters more than complexity. Let's talk about raw emotions. Let's talk about the significance of time, identity, survival, belonging, because this is something that brings universality into your work, because if your emotional core is unclear, people will move on. They won't read,
right,
and they won't understand. They won't feel connected. So it's really crucial to make your work universal, to make it acceptable. But again, not at the cost of losing yourself, not at the cost of to make it New York's bestseller. Like, straight to your emotion. It can be diverse, yes. But again, diversity doesn't require flattening differences. It requires deep humanity. Again, ironically, the more culturally rooted your work is to yourself, the more powerful it becomes globally. Furthermore, this also gives like a strong emotional resonance. Speaking of which, this brings me to one of your poem, titled February. Again, amazing work. What I realized in this poem is that this poem is imagistic, almost cinematic, with militaristic language, layered into winter scenery. So let me ask you this. So when you are writing such highly visual, image-driven poetry like February, how conscious are you of pacing and, spatial choreography on the page? And do you revise for visual rhythm the way a filmmaker edits a scene?
Yes, and in this case, it's funny because I wrote that poem exactly a year ago today, and it's a very imagistic response to a walk through Central Park on a day when it was very cold and it had snowed the night before, and it was one of these powdery snows. We did a couple of inches. We don't get a lot of snowfall in New York. We have this year, and last year we had some that one time. And the park was pretty empty. It's pretty windy. It's a very what I conceived of was Eden, the Garden of Eden, and a lot of people think, oh, it's this perfect place, and people got kicked out because Adam and Eve sinned. Okay, but gosh, doesn't Eden miss us? What's it like without people there? There's nature. So Central Park, there's nature. It's curated nature. Whoever curated it, God, people. Either way, so it's Central Park is curated nature, but when you're there off season, it's a very different. Particularly in that period where it's very cold in mid-February. There are almost no people there. The trees are there, but the deciduous trees are bare. There's some life, right? So that the military was Canada geese. There are 1,000 of them. They're on the Great Lawn. They are not native species, but they kind of drop down on the lawn and they do what they do, and then they fly over to the reservoir. And in the reservoir, there are some geese. So they go to a few duck families and some seagulls. And it's, the end of it is kind of looking at it from their perspective. Oh gosh, this is giant birds that are 5 times the size we are, and they're hundreds of them swooping in, squadron at a time, because they fly like a military squadron. Unless you know that that's what it's about, you're not gonna get that. So it's an unusual poem for me, in that it's just the image, and that you have to find out later that, okay, this is what he's talking about. But it works, I think, both ways, which is why what I'm doing now with it is presenting it both ways. But it works either way, because you're just getting the feeling. If you know it's ducks, you may not feel the fear that they fear, right? If you know that ahead of time. But if you're reading, okay, you're swimming in little circles, maybe it's a duck, I'm not sure, but they're looking up and they're afraid of these large squadrons of giant invaders advancing. So you get that emotion, and it's something that I've learned as I've been writing. The more I write, is how to have more emotion. I was really more of a right brain type of poet, more didactic, trying to convey an idea, and then when you use the emotion, it actually conveys the idea better. And I will say that haiku is not the only structure that I've used. I write sonnets, I've written ghazal, pantoum, like everything. And again, it's picking a vehicle, and it's using what works. And one of the things you had alluded to earlier with respect to simplicity versus complexity, I think you can use simple language, approachable language, and genuine language that fits the character, that the character would actually use to convey different levels of complexity of meaning. So what I try to do with the layers of meaning is it's a very readable poem. The point is to get one layer of meaning the first time, and then if the person goes back to it, you can there are more and more launching off points to think and to re-engage, and it becomes deeper and more complex as you go along. But it has to work at a straightforward, immediate level. You have to have that immediacy. You can't make it opaque.
That's so true, Patrick. And trust me, being an editor, I keep on telling, to my interns as well, people have this social stigma that if you use posh vocabulary or larger vocabulary, it's going to make you win the contest. No, that's not true. You have to prioritize simplicity, because it adds more layering to the meaning. Simplicity is not the absence of depth. It is the discipline of clarity, Complexity often hides behind heavy vocabulary, long winding sentences, intellectual ornamentation, sounding like a total prodigy. But does it layer the meaning? That comes from precision, not decoration.
That's an excellent way to put it. That's great. That's a great way to put it.
No, true. Because why simplicity is powerful? Because it gains you this accessibility in today's fast world. Readers today are overstimulated. If they must decode every sentence, they leave. They will stop reading your work. But if the sentences are simple, easy to grasp, and the meaning unfolds gradually, they stay. So again, there is this emotional penetration with simple language, because it hits deeper. Things we didn't say.
Yes. Yeah, that was the idea behind that one. On Solstice, is to have those lines they're leaping off points. You can, and that's one of the things that I love about anthologies, and about your anthologies in particular, is people buy they get an online issue, and their online is good for some purposes, or they get a periodical, and that's fine. That's a September issue, but then you get October, then November, and then pretty soon you get a pile. You're not likely to go back and pick up the September issue. An anthology you keep on your bookshelf. And so if it's the sort of thing where you're going to get one level of meaning the first time, and then you're going to kind of go back and flip through it again a couple months later, and you see something else, anthologies are perfect for that, because you will do that with an anthology. You can re-engage, and it's not the same. It has a life of its own. You're not supposed to get all of them all at once. Know that every detail is there for a reason, and that's all you need. But you find all these things, and then all these little hooks help you to re-engage back with it, with the ideas, and maybe have some of your own as you read it for the 9th time, the 10th time. There's always going to be something new. And I think a lot of your poems have that. A lot of that's one of the things I really like about your anthologies is it's very well thought out. They really fit the Horace Ars Poetica. It's good quality work that has that. It's readable, but then it's complex in terms of its content.
That was the whole reason, behind us like curating multiple writing contests, on vivid themes, so that at least writers, they don't have to force themselves to write on a genre or a subject matter which they don't feel accustomed to or not feeling like. I really wanted through this community like writers to come across their own way of writing style. And again, of course, I'm not going to make it super duper easy. Of course, I want them to challenge yourself, because the moment you step out of your comfort zone, like that you're good in romance writing, for example, but you haven't even touched the dark poetry, never read one. But maybe try once. Like emote all sorts of feelings, explore all sorts of genre, because it ultimately leads you to develop your mindset into a way that you have never imagined. If you keep on sticking to your comfort zone, then you're not gonna learn anything. Let's pick up the book, because the more you get to know how that particular writing script made you feel, how your body is responding, how your mind is, what your mind is thinking, the more you're gonna develop complexity, the depth, the layers of meaning into your write-up, no matter which genre you are writing. So that is again most important, to be open-mindedness towards read others authors work, read from different culture. Why not? Let's talk about Egyptian literature, let's talk about Greek mythology, explore it all. There are vivid stories in Hindu mythology as well, like in India. So explore it all. Speaking of aesthetic, so when you speak of your ars poetica, what core principles define your aesthetic? What makes a poem unmistakably Patrick Trombly?
I would say that the process, it's always going to have that depth at some level. We'll attempt to have immediacy as well as longer term resonance. What makes it a poem? Is it, it's not just a personal vignette. It's not this happened to me and I'm going to share what I thought of it, because honestly, I don't expect a lot of people to. There are 8 billion people in the world. Like, are we going to read 8 billion diary entries? No. What makes it universal, and how is it conveyed? What makes it one of mine is it's that attention to detail. It's a focus on have a thought, have a feeling, have both, and pay attention to detail in the way that you convey it. Pick the right mechanism, the right structure, and it could be your own structure that is where you physically design the poem in the shape of whatever it is. Generally speaking, if there's a narrative, I start in the middle. The way Horace advised, it does hook the reader. That doesn't mean you're not going to go back, but you present the person in the middle of the story. But everything about it should be true to what you're trying to say. How the narrative goes through. What happens at the end? How many characters are in it? Is this going to be fast or slow moving, and then you're building up to that suddenly some rapid at the end, like a German novel or a Russian novel. All the details should flow into that deeper meaning or thought that you're trying to convey. You get a feeling out of it, and it's a freeing feeling, like when you read a Rumi poem, because that's how free it should feel, weightless. But for the most part, there's a meaning, easy to digest, easy to swallow, easy to read, and you get that first level meaning, and then on from there, it's an adventure, it's a journey. You can take it as long as wherever you want it. So that's what makes it. It's once you've read a few of mine, it's hard to then, you pick it blind, but you're like, okay, that's Patrick. There's going to be content. You're writing it down, so you need to be well researched, have your facts down. But I would say all those things combined.
All right. So yes, Patrick. Oh my God, I'm loving this conversation, and we can go on and on. But now let's move forward. That brings me to rapid fire questions. Let's chill a bit. Let's relax. So all you have to do is to answer fast. No overthinking. No footnotes. Okay.
Sure. Okay.
Let me ask you. So where would you like to write at? Your favorite cafe, local library, write from home, or Central Park?
Right from home, where it's quiet. I like to have been other places, but generally where it's quiet. To surface, so I can get everything down.
Yeah. If winter were a genre, it would be a Russian novel, Gothic poetry, existential memoir, or a New York essay.
Either a Russian novel or Greek tragedy, or both.
Yes. All right. Your ideal writing companion would be a red-tailed hawk, a skeptical raccoon, or a silent cup of black coffee?
Skeptical raccoon. Somebody to why are you doing it this way? See, you forced to keeps you honest.
All right. Revision feels like sharpening a blade, repairing fence post, or arguing with your former self.
All three.
Okay, but if you have to pick anyone.
Repairing the fence post.
Yeah, it can be hectic. Okay. All right. So you trust more image, narrative, or silence between lines?
I guess I would say all three, but I'd say image, and that the other two convey the image.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. If a poem refuses to work, you strip it to bones, let it freeze until spring, bribe it with metaphor.
Let it freeze until spring.
Yeah. Inherited culture influences you like a shadow at noon, a voice in the next room, a root system underground.
Root system underground.
Choose your literary battlefield. Snow-covered field, urban alley at dusk, a quiet farmhouse kitchen.
The snow-covered field. Because it's got to be something else in 6 months. So it evolves.
Okay, 100. Okay. Which editor are you? Merciless surgeon, patient gardener, or an archaeologist brushing dust?
Depends on whether I feel like I can fix what I've got. So I would say the surgeon.
The divine in poetry appears as light breaking through clouds, a question with no answer, or a sudden silence in the room.
Can be anything. I would say the sun, usually in my poems.
If your poems were weather, they would be black ice, slow snowfall, or a hawk's shadow passing overhead.
Snowfall, because you don't know what's going to happen next. It could accumulate, it could not accumulate. Leaves more of the future open, undetermined.
Okay.
Ambiguity.
The alarm clock is a necessary enemy, or a metaphor waiting to happen, or a conspiracy with the sun.
It's necessary evil. Yeah.
Well, on that note, your rapid fire round is over, Patrick, and you have done exceptionally well job.
Oh, thank you. That was clever. I like that. That was a clever exercise. It makes you think. So, thank you.
So as we come to the close of this beautiful and layered conversation, Patrick, I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to you. Thank you for your depth, your patience with craft, and your generosity in articulating not just what you write, but why you write. Your journey of re-emerging after decades reminds us that art does not expire. It waits, it gathers, it returns stronger, more deliberate, more honest. So, before you bid farewell, would you like to say a final message to the emerging writers out there?
Sure. I'll keep this fast, and I would just say, know what you're trying to do, know what makes it worthwhile, and then go about doing it, and keep working on your craft, but never lose sight of what you're trying to do. Don't question it. Don't try to make it something it isn't. Just what it is, you try to do it better. And if it gets boring for you, then move on to something else. Sometimes you did it 20 times, you can do something else, but try to do what you're trying to do.
Thank you once again, Patrick.
Thank you.
Let this episode be your reminder there is no deadline on becoming who you are meant to be. Whether you are laying foundations like Patrick, reinforcing your fence post in quiet season, or preparing for your own chase scene, keep building, keep refining, keep showing up to the page. And from all of us at Wingless Dreamer, thank you for listening, for writing, and for believing in the power of words to endure winter and return in bloom. Until next time, keep dreaming, even if your wings are still becoming.